million jobs during Biden's first 42 months in office, compared to a 2.7 million contraction during Trump's presidency. Like, well, I guess it's unfair, but also simultaneously, like, that's kind of the same thing. If the Democrats ran on that, that would literally be the same thing as like Trump being like, remember how cheap oil was, which he does all the time. He does that all the time. He's like, remember the oil was so cheap. Remember how cheap gas was under my presidency? He's like, yeah, dude, because COVID was happening. And yeah, in 2018, Trump's job numbers were already dropping before COVID hit. Yes, it's not like the situation was good. It obviously is greatly skewed because of COVID, is what I'm trying to say. Similarly, unemployment rate rose 1.7 percentage points from 4.7 to 6.7 under Trump, declining 2.1 percentage points under Biden to the latest reading of 4.3. However, the gross data paints a wholly incomplete picture of the labor market strength under both presidents, as the COVID-19 pandemic upended the global economy beginning in 2020, causing U.S. employment to briefly spike to a record 14.8 after a whopping 22 million worker contraction from February 2020 to April 2020. That skewed Trump's numbers negatively and Biden's positively as the labor market returned to relative normalcy following the unprecedented shock. In fact, the first 3 quarters of Trump's tenure were marked by a remarkably strong job market, with non-farm payrolls by about 7 million between January 2017 and February 2020, and unemployment declining over the same period from 4.7 to 3.5. At the same time, the lowest mark since 1969, later surpassed by January and April 2023's 3.4%. Wage growth has been slightly higher under Biden, with an average hourly earning growing by 17% under Biden thus far, compared to the 15% during Trump's presidency. Obviously, the Trump era wage growth had a real wage growth for a lot of Americans because inflation wasn't out of control and outpacing as it did under the Biden administration for like 2 years. Oh, I just spilled diet soda all over my goddamn desk. That was Brandon's fault too. Thanks, Obama. But the Trump era wage growth went much further for Americans as it outpaced inflation more strongly, with the consumer price index rising by 8% January 2017 to January 2021, compared to 19% from January 2021 to July 2024. Americans saved an average of 8.7 of their monthly paychecks under Trump, compared to 5.9 under Biden, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysts' monthly personal savings rate metric. It's very difficult to say changes in the labor market were a product of one presidential administration versus the other. The labor market was very strong prior to COVID-19 under Trump and remained so under Biden. The macroeconomic factors driving up much of the labor market trends that were not so unique to the U.S., like the 2020's massive uptick in unemployment and labor shortages. Lots of this might just be a coincidence rather than the result of Trump and Biden's policies. Yes, it is not a surprise that the employment changes oftentimes is a massive downturn under Republican administrations, and then Democrats have to fix it, and then Republicans come back to a primed economy, and then they run the table again every single goddamn cycle. But it doesn't matter, because all that matters for people is that at the top of the hour there's a 3-minute ad break. That's still the same. Stronger spending power is perhaps the best feather in Trump's cap in terms of shepherding the world's largest economy, reflected in polling which suggests just 19% of Americans believe they're better off financially since Biden took office, compared to the 50% who think they are worse off. Just as the Biden economy benefited at a high level from inheriting a weak labor market, it was similarly doomed by grappling with a global inflation crisis, partially stemming from a variety of factors outside of Washington's control, supply chain delays due to COVID-19. Still, the U.S. economy has been remarkably robust, both presidents. Under both presidents, GDP, a metric which measures the total value of all goods and services produced in the U.S., is up 50% from 2015 to 2023. Under both presidents, the unemployment rate has been below where it was for the entirety of Barack Obama's 2008-2016 presidency, marred by the fallout of the financial crisis, save for the 2020-2021 pandemic blip. By the way, a fun factoid of what you saw: if Kamala wins, it will be the first time an incoming Democrat took over an objectively good or primed economy since before Reagan. It also might be the first time in 100 plus years where an incoming Dem doesn't have the Senate. Well, let's see what happens in Montana. It's not an incoming Democrat taking over from a primed, it's an incoming Democrat inheriting an economy on the upswing from a previous Democratic administration. So it's a little different because it's one term. If it was a 2-term recovery and then a Democrat won again, that would be unique, I think. Oh yeah, I forgot Biden was 1 term. I like to think of Biden as 0 term. I forget that he's president all the time. You know, that's a mistake that I make as well, chatter. Don't worry. Anyway, let's get back to this interview.
That consumers ultimately will pay more if there are more tariffs imposed.
So economists...
You just acknowledge that?
No, I don't, Kristen, because I think economists really disagree about the effects.
Wait, what do you mean? You don't acknowledge that? Why don't you acknowledge that? I mean, that is the case. Protectionist trade policy aside, like whether you agree with it or not, I don't know. But like, yeah, no, it definitely would. It definitely would be translated to the consumer. I mean, these guys say that when it comes to wage growth all the time, tariffs absolutely translate directly back to the consumer. There is a way in which it wouldn't, I guess, if magically companies decided to cut away into their profits, but I doubt that they're going to do that. Just like I doubt that they would do that with wage growth. Economists disagree about the effects of tariffs. Economist statement before the panel: imposing new U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum will improve America's welfare. Disagree 28%. Strongly disagree 65%. Agree 0%. Uncertain 0%. It's like not a thing. To be fair, economists don't agree on. No, they do agree on this. Economists literally never agree universally on anything except for tariffs will absolutely increase costs.
Of tariffs because there can be a dynamic effect, right? So what some economists will say is what you just said, that it will actually raise costs for consumers. But what other people say, and I think the record supports what this other view, is that it causes this dynamic effect where more jobs come into the country. Anything that you lose on the tariff from the perspective of the consumer, you gain in higher wages. So you're ultimately much better off. You have more take-home pay.
Wait, I thought higher wages also literally directly added to the cost. What's this guy talking about? I thought wage growth was the real reason why there was so much inflation in America. What happened? What's this guy talking about?
Really, I mean, the Wall Street Journal says economic data showed that Donald Trump's trade war with China did not achieve its objectives of reversing the declines in U.S. manufacturing or reshoring factory jobs. I hear what you're saying. It's a complicated picture, but just on that bottom line point, you can't guarantee that Americans won't wind up paying a penny more, can you?
Well, I think that what you can guarantee is that if you don't bring more manufacturing jobs back into this country, you don't make our supply chains more stable, you're going to cause higher prices over the long term. I think that is what is absolute.
I think the tariff war on China stuff is like pretty crazy. It's also even crazier that Biden also ran with it too. Biden literally also personally went along with this and was like running on this as well. I suspect that it is to gear America or to like try and move America away from China in terms of like its manufacturing hub, and then like, I don't know, maybe work with like India or something. I don't know. Like it's just like Cold War 2.0.
My own party was as wrong about it as Democrats were, and Donald Trump was right about it. What they said is that if you shipped all of our manufacturing to East Asia and to Mexico, Americans would pay lower prices. Well, here we are now, and Americans are paying higher prices. And just one more thing on this, Kristen, because it's really important to go at what Kamala Harris actually said in her convention speech. She says that she wants to stand up to China on behalf of American workers. If you're not willing to impose tariffs on companies that are manufacturing in China, using slave labor in China, you're not standing up to the Chinese, and Americans are really going to suffer.
And on pricing and prices right now, inflation obviously at its lowest level since 2021. But let's move on. Robert F. Kennedy, the big news yesterday.
Very big news.
He suspended his campaign, announced he's endorsing Donald Trump. He is also known as someone who has blamed vaccines for autism, antidepressants for school shootings.
It's really good that they went with like an even freakier dude. They were like, hey, JD Vance keeps talking about femoids and that is not playing really well. What we should do instead is have an even freakier dude be prominently displayed alongside our campaign, who objectively looks like he is overtaken by, like, there's videos of him that he put out of himself as a part of his campaign strategy where he's surrounded by bugs. Like, bugs are crawling all over his skin. Sounds like a derogatory term for females. It is. I'm saying, like, JD Vance is doing like incel speak.
But let's just go back very quickly. He says he isn't taking sides on 9/11. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, of course I don't agree with that, Kristen. Now, to be clear, I don't know what RFK actually said there. Maybe there was additional context. Of course, you actually have to see what people say before you agree or disagree with it. I certainly have taken sides in 9/11. I'm the pro-America side. I don't think that we should have been attacked, and I certainly think hitting back against the terrorists was justified. I don't know what RFK said there, but what I do know is that RFK said a lot of very interesting and important things, that the Democratic Party has become too pro-censorship, that the Democratic Party, especially in the wake of COVID, became...
See, if the media had like any sort of backbone, they'd be like, okay, you've said that like anti-Israel protesters should be shot. Not exactly those words, but, you know, something akin to that. How does that play with the fact that you say the Democratic Party is pro-censorship? It kind of seems like you're pro censorship as well. Or the book burnings that the Florida Republican Party has actively pushed for and successfully implemented.
Really anti-freedom and anti-child. I mean, you have Democrats saying that we should be masking toddlers in their schools, even though we knew it caused developmental.
Like, masking toddlers in schools is not a point of contention you can run on in 2024. You're only